Hey and hello everyone. Sorry, I'm still faffing with my camera as I usually am. I can never get it right first time. There we go. Not touching it anymore. It's good. Excellent. Hi guys. Okay, just double checking that light is all right. It's good. Happy with that. Cool. So, say hello. Let me know where you're from, where you're tuning in from, and it's just so I can see who's there and I know who's there. Sorry, still faffing. Hi Denise, hi Linda, hi Kate. Hello everyone. So, I hope you're all okay. It's a really grotty, misty, horrible evening out here again in Cornwall. Yeah, we've had a busy day the last couple of days, just getting all the parcels and bits and bobs out from the market on Friday. So, but it's been good. We've had a nice walk on the coast path earlier, and now we're back. We're here. So just say hello, everyone, so I can see you there. I'm just going to give everyone a bit of a chat. It's nice to see you here. Welcome. I hope the light is okay. I'm looking at myself on the big screen and it seems to be doing okay. So I really hope it's good. And I've got my double backup thing as well, in the sense of I can see those comments and I can see the comments here as well. So cool. Excellent. Great. So let's start. First of all, I think actually, yes, I know Sarah. Family up further up in the UK seem to have had much better weather. And it's all a bit of a shock to the system for us because obviously we're kind of, used to really hot weather in Greece. And even though, trust me, I do so much prefer this in a way, but it would be nice to have a little bit of summer. So we had a bit of summer over the weekend, so it's just one of those. So, oh, perfect. That sounds wonderful. Inverness, wonderful. So, hey, Susan, nice to see you. Sean, Liz, Koo, hello. Yeah, so great to see you all here. And I'm going to just dive right in. I've got a lot to share tonight. Hey Mags, nice to see you. I just wanted to share a few things in like tonight and in future live kind of webinars, because I think it's really important that that kind of knowledge is out there. And coming to Devon at the weekend, please order sun. Yeah, we'll try, Shan. And one of the most important things to me is how to look after your crystals so they are always at optimum level to do something. Simon is just running through.
Sorry, folks, I see my something on the laptop.
Oh, the cable.
Sorry, people. Won't be a minute.
Here I am trying to be all professional and set up and ready.
Which you are.
Yeah.
Have a good evening.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
So there we go. Yeah, that's kind of thrown me now. I have no idea where I was. Oh yeah, cleansing crystals and how they're actually, just perfect and ready in working order. And also, it's really important to kind of be aware of what can happen if they are not and you're working with them. So I just wanted to share all that tonight, and hopefully in the future there'll be other themes that I'll be, guided to share with you. So there's just so much out there that is a misinterpretation. There is stuff out there which it's like little myths, which have persistent myths, let's put it that way as well. Things like some crystals don't ever need cleansing, that kind of thing. So I want to talk about all that tonight. By all means, do feel free to ask questions. I'll try. The thing is, when I'm doing a live, because the communication and interaction is so different to when you're in a classroom as such, I will try and keep an eye on the comments as such. and answer your questions whilst I see them. If I don't see them, by all means, please, at the end, I'll just have a kind of Q&A. If you've got any questions that you would like to ask, then I'll happily answer them then. So, but yeah, like I said, it's always just one of those things with a live in this setup as such. I'm trying to, I'm just talking at myself at a screen and I can see your comments in a very, very small section there. So it's just one of those where I'm kind of trying to navigate both those things and just, trying to stay on point and on the theme as well. So let's start. Welcome. I think there's a couple of people who are kind of new, who've been following me, but perhaps don't know who I am really, or have kind of just dropped into the page. So if so, welcome. I know most of you actually know me, but just a quick recap on me and my work with crystals. I've been working and attracted to kind of work with crystals all my life. I'm one of those kids who drove her mother to distraction because every crystal, every kind of stone pebble on the beach was a treasure and had to come home. And that's been kind of going all through my life. And I then started to work in earnest with crystals, or study them, let's put it that way. I think when I was 24, I started reading books and doing small courses, that kind of thing. And then life took over, as it does. I had a lot of changes, and then I decided to go on an ACHO course. So that's one of the main umbrella organizations here in the UK in 2014 to really, kind of put a base foundation in. So that was the 2-year course that I did. And that really helped me open up and really give structure to the kind of intuitive knowledge that I had. I'll come to charging later, Denise, right at the end. So bear with me there. Charging, that's one of the things that get confused a lot. Charging, cleansing, it's not the same thing. So, I've been selling crystals since 2012, and that was again another reason why I decided to really go on a professional course and in-depth course, because I wanted to be able to really understand, I guess, the less intuitive but more the structural kind of influences of a crystal as well. So I really wanted a really good foundation, and that's what I did. So, and I've been doing that since, like I said, 2012. And here we are in 2022. So it's a good 10 years that I've been dealing with all sorts of crystals and selling them, and built my little business. And yeah, it's been amazing. The one thing that I can really say is that crystals definitely changed my life in a big way. Not only just because I have this amazing privilege that I built my business around doing what I love, and also that the crystals have really helped me do my healing, my inner healing. And that's obviously an ongoing process for a lot of people. By all means, I'm still doing exactly the same as we're all doing. I'm still, kind of dealing with my inner little wounds and trying to weave my way through there. But it's the crystals, the crystal kingdom, that always takes me back to that place of inner reflection and inquiry and finding the answers as well. So, and then, applying that kind of, that kind of knowledge and wisdom that they share then in my own healing journey. So it's just wonderful. So, Shan, that's really nice. Thank you. And this is one of those things, without kind of blowing my own trumpet, but that is one of the things that a lot of people tell me, is that they love their crystals that come from me. And that is purely because I put a lot of energy and investment into picking the right crystals. They're all ethically sourced through. I only deal with 2 suppliers in the UK. Both know the miners. One actually owns the mines, so he makes sure that his labourers have fair conditions, fair pay, that kind of thing. And of course, Stacey and Jan, are just amazing at sourcing loads of crystals from all over the world, and they have the same ethos that I have in looking after crystals. So it's really important to me to source them in that way, and that filters through in how I treat them, and then that's being passed on to you. So, and I, as a guardian, interim, or as I pass them on to you, it's important to me that you know how to look after the crystals as well, so you can keep that vibration really high, like I said, so they can work for you, and be at their kind of optimum state all the time, and just support you in your life and your healing journey. So let's first of all just come back to a few crystal basics, so we can just kind of drop right in and understand what crystals do, and then we will understand also why they absorb negative energies and what they do with them. So first of all, when you look at a crystal, and I'll just go to the kind of standard explanation that is scientifically understood as well, is that crystals store, amplify, and direct information. And information is just in the term of energy. So whether that is energy of, for example, a pulse that is given and it sits then in a radio, or it sits then in a watch, for example, a crystal watch, and you give it that one pulse and program it to repeat that pulse exactly at 1 second, that's a prime example of kind of how a crystal stores the information that's it's been given, how it then kind of repeats it and directs it and then amplifies this as well. And it's the same with crystals in the radio, or even crystals in the computer. Your chips have crystals in them. That's where data is stored. Even cryptic data, as we have in the computer, where a letter is translated to a frequency that is then stored and understood by the computer and passed on to wherever you're sending it, right down to a crystal that can be so fine-tuned in a radio that it can pick up a particular frequency of another radio station that is sending information out on that frequency, and that is why you're getting Radio 1 to BBC, blah, 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 blah. So that's basically what crystals do. That's their job. So, and that's the thing, when it stores energy like that, it's just in a room, or you're healing yourself with it, or you're even healing someone else with it. In that energy exchange between the humans and the crystal, or even just in the space that we live in, because that environment carries energy as well. Energy changes all the time. And if you don't keep that energy high and clean, then automatically, stagnant energy kind of accumulates, and the crystals will absorb that. That's what their job is. That's what they do. So, and tonight I'm going to just teach you how you can recalibrate your crystals and just keep them nice and shiny and clean and cleansed and charged. So, first of all, when you look at energy in those terms, what I said earlier, and stagnant energy, bad energy, good energy, however you want to call it, let's just come to the kind of conclusion that energy is just energy, okay? It's not necessarily bad, it's not necessarily good, unless it has a particular effect on you, obviously. So crystals in their pure, beautiful state, as they should be when they're just kind of out of the earth, and they haven't got any attachments of the human stuff or whatever it is. But in fairness, the moment they are picked up out of the earth and they are broken apart, things happen to the crystal. But basically, the crystal info in itself is the healing essence, okay? So it's the color, the chemical composition, it's the structure of the crystal, it's the oversoul, the healing oversoul that is within, the hardness. All these factors make up the crystal essence, and that unique pattern picture is what actually gives it its healing information and its healing properties, okay? So in its pure state, that is what the crystal does. in the moment that we are actually kind of placing it in a situation where energy is exchanged, for example, in a healing session, or for example, even just in a personal meditation, you are beginning to exchange information with the crystal and the crystal absorbs that, and vice versa. Then basically what we're doing in that moment, we are attaching information to it. So the crystalline structure is still there, the purity of the crystal is there, but because we're exchanging energy with it, so for example, our thoughts, our worries, our fears, very often, we pick up a crystal because we're a little bit distracted or anxious or whatever, and we start, working with it. In that moment, the crystal then absorbs that energy, and so there's an attachment of energy or an absorption of that energy that then sits in the crystal. And I had one of the prime examples when I only just began, and we had some of the bigger pieces in the shop here in Polperro, which is not there anymore, by the by. Most of you know this, but don't come looking for me in Polperro, because we just work from our headquarters home kind of thing now. But there was a lady who walked in and she touched one of the big crystals and kind of went about her business. And then later in the day, she actually came back and she said, I feel awfully weird since I've touched that crystal. I don't feel very well. I feel very anxious, just literally like I'm possessed kind of thing. Well, it turned out this lady was actually, or is, an empath, and she'd basically just done the job what some people and some starseeds do. They go about clearing the planet all day long. And, then it was basically just, she just absorbed that whole energy that was sat in the crystal, because people touch big crystals and, so they wanted to get the energy of that. And of course, I hadn't really done my job. It was, it'd been a busy couple of days, and voila, it happened. She absorbed that stuff. So, and that's what happens when we don't look after our crystals very well as well. So over time, the accumulation becomes stronger and stronger, and they store it. And water and crystals work on a very, very same frequency. So water in its crystalline structure actually shows us how memory is stored, or energy, information, frequency is stored, and crystals do that at the same time. But obviously they're already in a crystalline form. But if you don't know the work of Dr. Masaru Emoto, then please do go and look. It's all about how water carries information and has a memory of information that it's given. It really explains very well how energy attaches itself to a medium like water or crystal. And when you then actually look at those particles under a microscope, you can see how the programming, so how feeding of information to crystals actually looks under the microscope in crystalline frozen water forms. It's absolutely amazing, but it really shows you how we can influence in the programming. I really hate that word. I'll come to that later. But yeah, it shows how it absorbs that information and it carries that information, and how that information actually changes the structure of that droplet of water that has perhaps been programmed with the word hate or the word love. And it's exactly the same with the crystals. They are on very similar frequency, and that's what they do. And they store information. So it's just so you really know how important it is to realize and remember that that is their job. That's what crystals do. When you work with a Lemurian seed crystal, then you will, yes, very good, Shan, exactly. But when you really understand that this is part of what they do, this is their soul essence of crystals, they store memory, then you understand that, once they go about their business and they store information, then if it's not very good information, then that will have an influence on how they work with you and what effect they have on you. So how do I cleanse my crystals? I'm going to just first of all, just make a bit of a real point of explaining two things: cleaning and cleansing. Okay, there are two words that are often used interchangeably. For me, cleaning, literally cleaning, is the physical cleaning of a crystal. Okay, so for me, that is scrubbing, using a brush, holding them underwater, really cleaning the actual crystalline form as such. The cleansing for me is removing energy, information, stored information that doesn't belong to the blueprint of the actual crystal. Okay, so those are the two things that I want to make a big difference before we go on and go into detail. Cleaning is really taking care of the actual physical crystal. So if I have a crystal like this, this is a black obsidian or a gold sheen obsidian. So this is one of the crystals that, for example, is perfectly fine to be washed underwater because it's actually not a crystal, it's glass. I'm not going to go into too much detail in this because we'd be here forever. But so this is, glass, as we know, we can just wash underwater. So cleaning for me is washing this crystal underwater. Okay. So, and in that moment, when you're cleaning a crystal, you get rid of impurities such as dust because it's been lying around in the room, or it's just come out of the earth, or it's come from the wholesaler or the mine, still with matrix and dust from the mine attached. It can be anything in that way. It could be oils and sweat on jewelry, or because you've been working with some stones as a massage stone, or just holding, and it's been warm, hot, and you naturally perspire anyway. So those are all things that more porous crystals will actually absorb, or it will just sit on the surface. And that's the first process always when you receive a crystal, a new crystal to you, or you have used a crystal to work with in meditation or perhaps with another client. Especially if you're using them with clients, then it's even more so important that you actually wash the crystal. And I must say, that is for crystals who are perfectly fine in water in a minute. I'll give you a kind of a good guide of what you can do to actually understand, can I use this in water or not? But that's the first thing that you do when you get a crystal as such. You always make sure, is it clean? Is it not? Does it need a brush? If it's got nooks and crannies, sometimes I've got a toothbrush, and when I've got crystals that have come, fresh from the mines and they haven't been cleaned very well, then I'll really get in there with a toothbrush and just, scrub in the water. And if it's really stubborn and persistent, you can even use an ecological washing up liquid, and just, really get in the nooks and crannies and make sure that it's absolutely clean. Okay, so that's the first form of taking care of your crystals when it gets to you. When you work with crystals that are not water soluble or don't get hurt by being washed, okay, crystals love the energy of water because it's very akin. But just begin to hold them under. You can use tap water, but you can also, even nicer, I think, are natural water sources, like a spring, that kind of thing. So, if you were in Glastonbury and you'd go to one of the two springs and wash it there, that's a beautiful way. But just even in nature, if you find a spring, anything that flows, okay? So I don't like leaving crystals in water because the importance of actually the flow and things flowing away and taking the energy away from your crystal is really important in that moment. So, just hold it under running water. If you've got no natural spring, which most people don't happen to have in direct vicinity without having to lug your crystals about, tap water is fine, okay? It is still water, and you can speak a blessing over it as well, so the water has a more beautiful energy. But what you often find is when you hold it underwater, and in the beginning, it's kind of soapy. It feels quite smooth, and that the energy is changing when the crystal all of a sudden becomes a little bit more resistant. Okay, so all of a sudden you'll find that you can't really rub it so easily anymore. There's a resistance there. That's because all the oils and all the grime and and the dust have been washed away so far. So the actual surface is cleaner, and when things are really squeaky clean, and that's where the term comes from, things begin to squeak because you can't just rub over it anymore. It actually creates friction, so there's a squeak. So that's one part of it. But also, I always find when you begin to find resistance, that basically on an energetic level also means that the wholeness of the crystal has been restored. Okay, so it's just one of those things that you can actually physically feel, and you actually know, oh, that's changed, so that's probably pretty good and pretty clean now. On an energetic level, if you really tune into the crystal and really tune into the water, then you will kind of know when it's done, when most of the energy is actually flown away and has been cleansed and it's moved away. So, it's one of those things where I say, if you feel that in a physical level, then you can pretty much say that the cleaning part of it has been done. Okay, so that's one thing. So that's cleaning. The next part that's really important then, so after, the first thing is just the cleaning, um, and the kind of cleansing energetically beginning, is the actual discharging of the crystal. Okay, so discharging, cleansing, however you want to call it, is basically the energetic cleansing of the mineral. And it's basically, there are so many misconceptions about this cleansing and charging, and I'll come to that in a minute, Jackie. It's a really lovely way of what you're doing there, and I'm glad you're saying, you're charging the water in the moon, and then you use that water. That's a lovely way as well, because at some point, you're actually cleansing and you're charging at the same time. But it's just one of those things where there is a lot of different opinions, in my opinion, still, and I'll just go into what I said earlier about what crystals can you clean in water, and what and cleanse in water, and which ones can't. So as a general rule of thumb, what is said, if you have a crystal that is harder than 6.57 on the scale of Mohs, so the hardness of the crystal, okay, then they're pretty safe to actually wash in the water. So all your quartzes, okay, and then and quartzes includes anything from rose quartz to amethyst to the chalcedonies, the agates, the clear quartzes, all of those, everything in the quartz family, they can quite happily be washed in pure water, pure running water, and you will not harm them, okay? On the other end, anything that's really soft. So one of the softest materials, for example, is the gypsum. So you're looking at your selenites, the calcites, even fluorite is only 4.0 to 4.5 on the Mohs scale. You've got to be really careful. And I don't know whether anyone of you has done it before. When I was green and totally unknowledgeable about crystals, I actually washed a selenite wand once, and I just thought, oh my God, the whole sheen was gone, that the polished kind of super smooth surface kind of disintegrated into itself, and it became dull and horrible. And then there are, of course, certain structures which literally just completely dissolve in the water, which selenite will do at some point. And even the calcite family, they're somewhere between 3.5, a very soft crystal. It's a little bit more robust. You can actually kind of wash it, but you should certainly never leave it in the water. And even that can be damaged by being in the water. So you've got to be really careful there. Fluorite, the same thing. So if you're not sure, just really make sure that no, you can't, Julia. It's a desert rose is a gypsum, so it would disintegrate and you would hurt it. Yes, Sean, I think most of us have done it at some point, isn't it? You just think, oh my God, what happened there? So, but yeah, so that as a general rule of thumb is anything that's above a 7. So that's also your beryls, that's your rubies, your sapphires, that's all on the other end of the scale. Aquamarine, morganite, they're perfectly fine, they're perfectly safe. And then with the others, you've just really be very careful and do your research and make sure that you're not going to damage them, okay? So it's just absolutely heartbreaking when you don't know. and it and you just destroy something in the process. So it's really sad to see them go. But basically, like I said earlier, the same as with the cleaning process, because water absorbs information, it holds information, and it absorbs the energy from the crystal when you're holding it under the water. Um, Jewel, I'm really sorry. I'll get into Q&A. I'm happy to do a Q&A, but tonight really is about cleansing crystals. So I'm not going to go into that sort of questions tonight. Okay, so I'm really going to focus on what I'm sharing with you guys tonight. So, but yeah, so that's what water does well, because that's kind of we do it the same. We wash ourselves at the same time we have an energetic cleanse. So if you can wash your crystals with water, then please, and cleanse them that way as well. And you kind of, you just kind of do it on a very conscious mental level as well. You really infuse the water with your intent and the crystal with the intent of clearing any energy that may still be in there that is not of the crystal and shouldn't be there, that it can just kind of flow away. And that's why I say don't leave them in the water, because then you get this weird exchange of the water absorbing the bad stuff. And then the crystal says, but hey, I'm a kin and I'm going to absorb the stuff that you've just absorbed of me. And basically you just end up with a bowl of both having to struggle with the same energy because it can't flow anywhere. So that's why I always say don't leave crystals unless they're cleansed, but I'll come to that later, in a bowl of water to cleanse them, because basically you're just creating an almighty soup of one infecting the other again. So it doesn't really, do the job that we're trying to do. So there are, besides water, obviously, other ways to cleanse your crystals. And that's really good to know and important to know, because you can't cleanse all of them in water. It is still, in my eyes, one of the best ways um, to kind of cleanse in general. And most of us do work with the harder crystals anyway, so it's just one of those. But I also want to just clear up a couple of myths, okay? Because I hear of it a lot, and it kind of then gets shared, and it's, oh, yeah. First of all, I want to come to this thing that there are crystals which never, ever need to be cleansed, okay? I really don't agree with that. I think it was actually Melody who kind of gave a couple of crystals which never need to be cleansed. There are certainly crystals which have a kind of transmutational energy in them, or they are so bright and light that they don't absorb and store that information as long as some others do, but they still need cleansing. For me, that's, one of those things that I just hear a lot, and I'm just like, but why do you think that? Where does that come from? Because, and I'll give you an example. So one of the ones that is often mentioned is citrine. Another one that is mentioned is blue kyanite, I think. Carnelian is often mentioned. Hematite is often mentioned. In my personal experience, they all absorb energy, and that's what they do. And unless a particular crystal actually has the transformational, liberating energy that helps clear energy, I don't think it's right to say that they don't need any cleansing. On top of that, there is also, and I'll come to that at the end, just to, how can you keep your crystals on a high vibrational level? A big part of that is basically that you treat your crystals with respect. You approach them with love. You give them the attention they deserve. It's all intent, it's all energy. It's an energy that you are projecting onto the crystal. And so the crystal then actually absorbs that energy and says, this is a high energy. I like that. So I will be vibrating on that level. If you want to ignore them and not do anything, then that's obviously a choice. But the crystal will reflect that, and very often they go dull, they go to sleep, and that kind of thing. So that's one of the myths I just wanted to talk about. I personally feel that every single crystal needs clearing and cleansing, including amethyst, which I'm going to talk to you about in just a minute, because you can actually cleanse and charge crystals in amethyst, but that is because amethyst has got a quality that very few crystals have, which is the liberating effect. It's the releasing effect, and they transmute energy. So they actually take negative energy, and in that purple ray, that purple flame energy, it gets transmuted back into love. So, but even amethyst needs cleansing. So that's just one of the myths. The other myth that I very often, or not myth, but one of the things that I often hear, and I'll go on to selenite as well, because I know selenite is all the rage at the moment as a cleansing or charging tool. In fairness, most of the tools out there that are being sold at the moment are called charging tools, but again, it's really important for you guys to understand charging is not cleansing. Okay, charging is actually infusing energy, a particular energy, and even moon energy. Everybody's so quick to pop all their crystals out in the moon, and you really need to know what kind of energies are out there, and do you really want to charge it with that kind of watery energy that may be sometimes very emotional or very charged, that kind of thing. So I very often just pop my crystals to sleep in those periods, certainly when it's when it's like eclipses, that kind of thing. A lot of people are really like, oh, I've put all my crystals out because of the eclipse. I find that a very uneasy energy sometimes, and I don't really want my crystals to absorb too much of that. So I will actually protect them from that and just keep them in their nice, happy, pure, neutral state. So, but coming to one, for example, you see it in a lot of books as well, is discharging on hematite. It's very true that hematite has a quality that helps release or kind of create an energy of exchange. There's a flow there, which is certainly true. It's very conductible. It's got high metal content, that kind of thing. But in fairness, if you discharge it onto hematite, you're just going to end up with perhaps one crystal which is a little bit discharged, and a lot of other crystals, or the hematite crystals, because they say a bed of hematite tumbles or that kind of thing, which then need to be discharged because they've absorbed all the stuff that was in the bigger crystal, or whatever crystal is basically on top. So for me, I just think it just creates extra work. Why would you do it? It's just you're just discharging from one into the other. It's a little bit the same as cleansing with a bowl of water and just leaving them in there, where in the end they just end up in a mutual exchange where one just passes the information back to the other, and it can't go anywhere because it's being held in this bowl. So, it's just one of those. Another one that I often hear is discharging in the freezer. And I guess it does feel like it works to an extent. But I think we're kind of fooling ourselves there, because basically what it does, it just freezes the information. So the information gets solidified in space just for a moment, like it's frozen in space. It's very much like a freezing spell. They often say if you've got a conflict and you need to write it on a piece of paper and then just put it in the freezer, it doesn't resolve the situation. It's just freezing it. It's not changing the structure. It's not releasing anything. It's literally just freezing in the energy in time. As soon as the crystal warms up again, in the beginning, it might feel amazing. And you think, oh, that's really different. But that's simply because the energy has been, held in time and space by being frozen as such. But as soon as it warms up, nothing's changed. It's not been released into anything. It's not been changed in structure. It's not been transmuted, nothing. So for me, it's one of the myths that keeps actually going round. And I'm just like, that's not discharging. That's just kind of freezing information, energy. So it's not a method that I would recommend. And the same thing is actually with you can charge crystals in a freezer. Some crystals really like being charged and woken up by the energy of cold in the freezer, because they've been close to the surface in the mountains, that kind of thing, and they really like that environment. So you can see them coming alive. but it's not discharging. Okay, so that's one of the things that I often hear, and I'm just like, no, I don't think so. So selenite. Selenite is certainly a crystal that has an enormous amount of light. Selenite is certainly a crystal that conducts light and it passes that light on to the crystal, okay? When you do that, you are charging, you are not discharging. So you are not cleansing. Just be very, very aware of that. I think selenite has a self-cleansing energy, but it's not strong enough to really cleanse other crystals as such and really completely and utterly discharge them. It's again that same play where the one crystal is just absorbing the energy of the other. The energy has not been released, it's not been transmuted. And in my personal opinion, this is just me, it does transmute a little bit, but it's not enough to really cleanse. So for me, I keep coming back to water, and I'm coming back to, or I'm going to go on to other methods now, which will really help you with that. Charging plates are different. Like I said, you can charge a crystal with the purity of the energy of a selenite, because there's very little that has comparable light. And certainly when they've got engravings on them. So, and it's just one of those things that you just need to be aware of what engravings are on there. So do you want to charge it with the Om? Do you want to charge it with the energy of the flower of life? Do you want to charge it with Reiki signals, as symbols? It's all of that you just kind of need to be aware of, because that information will certainly be passed on to the crystal that you are actually charging on the selenite, but you are not really cleansing. So I just want to make that absolutely clear, okay? So, and Sean, I hope that kind of has answered your question as well. Charging, yes, really do love that, because especially when you have a circle of selenite, especially when you have the flames or the towers, the spirals, they have a beautiful energy that creates a pillar of light in and over the crystals, and then really charges whatever is sat in the middle with that energy. So that is a beautiful way to charge, not to discharge. Okay, so not to cleanse. But coming on to the next part now, talking about what other ways are there to cleanse? And I'm seeing a couple of comments here already, and they are my favorite ways as well. So first of all, we all love doing it. We love doing it with ourselves. Is this smudging? Okay, smudging, holy smoke. And basically what you're making use of there is a plant material or a resin that is actually that has a purifying essence in itself. So white sage has a very, very purifying, cleansing essence to it. It used to be used in hospitals and, and in healing houses, even in the old healing houses of the olden times, they had bundles of sage and other pungent herbs which have this kind of detoxifying and cleansing, purifying energy, such as rosemary, bay, lavender, thyme, oregano, all those really strong herbs that have this medicinal smell. They have this fantastic cleansing energy, not just on a physical level when you ingest them, but also on an energetic level. So by working with the smoke of such beautiful cleansing herbs, you can use those to cleanse your crystals. And basically all you do, I'm not going to light anything here because I've got so much on my little table here that I can't really, demonstrate as such. These are things that I actually really do in my not one-to-one, but in-person retreats. But you basically just light your bundle of sage or your charcoal and your herbs and resins, your gums, that kind of thing. And then you just hold the crystal in the smoke that rises, so above the smoke that rises. So the smoke can go around it, wrap itself around it, and go through it energetically as such. And again, you will kind of have a really good feel of when all of a sudden the crystal feels lighter, it feels better, it feels more beautiful. That's the kind of thing. So It's a beautiful way to honor the crystal. It's also a really beautiful way to honor yourself, by the by, because it's just a lovely way to just cleanse and energetically discharge your own auric field of anything that doesn't belong there, basically, and anything that's stagnant. So can you use dried sage from your garden? Yes, you can, because it doesn't have to be white sage. And let me just quickly talk about that as well. So we all know Palo Santo, white sage. They are hugely popular, but it is really becoming quite environmentally unsustainable now, to have such large amounts come into the community. If you can grow your own herbs, which is something that I'm really planning here, that you can use in your own herbery and then dry and then just bind your own little smudge sticks, is absolutely perfect. It's all you need. It doesn't have to come around half the planet to arrive with you. I will say that white sage, especially when it's been grown in California, has a very particular pungent and strong cleansing energy, but our herbs do it just as well. So, it's just the whole thing, because of the beauty of the Native American culture that is obviously really penetrated into our Western culture as well. But yeah, just give it some thought and just try it. Just dry a bundle of different herbs, bind them together, make sure they're absolutely dry as well. So really, really well dried. Light it and then just see, and you'll find that the smell is often actually so much more amazing. So yes and no. If you've got lots of black smoke, then it's not been dried well enough, Shan. So make sure it's been really, really well dried, or even use a dehydrator, and then you shouldn't have that problem anymore. It's literally just that maybe the drying process hasn't been well enough. I've certainly noticed that when I dried our own herbs in Greece, because the air quality is there very different there as well. Um, it's totally different, because obviously in the sun there everything just dries to a crisp. There's certainly no residue of any moisture left, and obviously here this is a little bit different, because we often have a lot of moisture still in the air, still even in the middle of summer, like at the moment, and it's very misty and wet out there. So but yeah, so make sure about that. But it's a really nice thing, and it's a very good way to honor the land and be in touch with the land, and work with its cycles, and then bring that back into the stone medicine, and really honoring that part of it as well. So I think it's a beautiful way to combine those medicines. So that's one of the beautiful, very well working ways that you can safely cleanse all your crystals. I still prefer water if I can, but if that can't be done, smudging is wonderful. But obviously, it's just one of those things. You don't always want to fill your whole house with the smoke of the smudge as such. It takes its sweet time, and your neighbors will probably at some point think that you've gone on to drugs. But yeah, just do it. It's a good way to cleanse. So it's really positive. The other way you can cleanse, and I just touched on that, is amethyst. You find it in a lot of books as well, and I find it does work very well. So amethyst is one of the very, very few crystals that has the transmutational energy of liberation. So it basically transmutes the energy into freedom. So instead of attachment of information, it teaches you to let go. That's one of the main healing characteristics of amethyst as well. It's one of the reasons why it works so incredibly well in helping with addictions, letting go of repetitive patterns, releasing grief, all those things, and really understanding that everything's transient. There's no need to hold on to anything, because life changes, and that's the biggest lesson of amethyst. It's just like, this is life. Nothing stays the same. Everything changes every single second. So what are you holding on to? And it does the same on an energetic level with any information it encounters. So if that happens to be a crystal that is loaded with information that is not in its original blueprint, then it will help transmute that and say, let go. It's time to let go. There's no need for you to hold on to this anymore. So placing crystals in a big amethyst geode, or even just an amethyst bed, especially if you've, it's a lovely way just to finish the process when you've washed your crystals or you've smudged your crystals. Pop them onto an amethyst bed or in an amethyst geode for 2-3 hours, then usually they're fine. If you've got something that's really, really sticky, just leave it in there overnight, 12 hours, 24 hours, and then it really should be good to go. And the beauty of amethyst is also that at the same time as it actually discharges, it through that violet flame energy of transmutation, it also it makes space and infuses with all the right energies, so it charges. Okay, and that's really a really good way to round that process of cleansing as such off. So I love using that method. And I think it works really, really well. So it's just like the finishing touch. It's like crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, and just the the icing on the cake. Just saying, yeah, that now feels really right. So it's one of the things that I really love doing. And then another way you can actually cleanse, even though I rarely do it because I find it quite aggressive, is salt. So salt is very well known for, again, its purifying effects. You see it in so many different ways that we use it in our household. So, the sodas, etc. When you're cleaning, literally scrubbing, ingesting salt to actually bring on vomiting, so you can cleanse yourself that way. That's salt water that is that has that effect to detoxify and purify. So many different ways, even on the energetic level, where you actually throw salt over your shoulders to ward off the evil, or sprinkle it around your house to actually protect your house and cleanse and bless it. So it comes back in Jackie, should amethyst be natural? I think beds just work best on that one. So geodes, simply because they have all the points and they just really infuse the crystal that's sat on there. So having something natural works best, I find personally. So salt comes back in many cultures as a protective and cleansing, purifying energy, as well as on a physical level as on an energetic level. So all you need to do with your crystals is really to just have a bowl of rock salt, preferably Himalayan or sea salt. Don't use the refined kind of horrible chemical salts. And you literally just fill a bowl of that and you pop your crystals on there, so you can just lay them on top. And just leave them there for a night, for example, and then you can take them off the next morning and they will be discharged. Trust me, because but the thing is, like I say, I just find salt very aggressive. So just look at cars in sea air, for example. It has this really corroding energy, so it really gets it gets into the nitty gritty of things. And I do find it's a very good way to work with crystals which are really, really heavily laden with some really icky energy, okay, with stuff that you just can't get rid of. And I'll just give you an example. Is, for example, if you've been working with particular crystals on people who are terminally ill and have a really horrible brown rice. I'll talk about that. Who've had a really progressive, horrible terminal illness, and you've been working with them. Sometimes the energy of that really lingers in a crystal, and it's really stuck. And that's when you would use a salt, for example. So for me, that's where I would actually probably use it. You've again got to be really careful with crystals in salts, because it is a corrosive material. It really gets into anything. So you've got to be very careful how you use it. And what I tend to do is just, I When I know it's a really hard crystal that is not porous and nothing can happen, anything above, again, that beautiful Mohs scale 7 and above, then you can just lay it on it. If I know the crystals are a little bit more vulnerable, or they perhaps have had an aura treatment, that kind of thing, that can really get damaged, then it's really important to just lay a thin cloth over it. Anything from a muslin, that you would usually try to use to strain like cheeses and that kind of thing, or just a very fine layer of very thin cloth. It's just so it doesn't actually touch the salt, but the salt energy will still envelop it, and it will release the energy. So that's one of the ways. But sometimes, it's you can just, the really hard ones, you can just really dig into the salt, so they can really sit there for a couple of hours, and then that gets released. So that's another very powerful, very strong way. A word on salt water as well. I personally love taking some crystals to the sea, but not every crystal likes that. Again, salt water is quite corrosive, it's quite aggressive as such for some surfaces, certainly the softer minerals, so please don't take them into the seawater. But Lemurians, for example, and other crystals that really have a connection to the sea, like aquamarine, which is even harder than the quartzes, they love to be taken to the sea and just roll around in the waves for a little bit. Okay, so it's really tuning into what the crystal wants, and B, really understanding also their chemical composition. Can they take it? Can they not take it? But usually anything that really resonates with the sea in that way and has a really strong chemical makeup and structure, then they will love being cleansed in the sea as well. Making your own salt water is just one of those things. I would say just don't go there, because you can often do more damage than good. If you want to work with salt, just use a salt bed, or even I have a halite. So a halite is crystalline Himalayan salt, and you can just lay something on top of that bed and it will cleanse and release the information. So that's a fairly safe way to do it as well. And again, I will just put a very soft sheet of muslin on top, so the actual crystals don't touch the halite as such, but it will have that. So, and then you have to really work hard with the crystal, because usually you would just throw the salt away. So please don't use the salt for anything else. What it really needs to be done is just discharged in water or thrown away, and then so it can flow away, because the energies it holds are very, very strong. So I often hear about cleansing in the moon. I'm cleansing my crystals in the moon. You're not cleansing them, you're charging them. So be aware of that. However, cleansing in sunlight is possible. So there is that magic golden hour, noon, when the sun is at its strongest as such in the day. And basically what it means is just the UV factor is at its highest point. And when it's at that highest point, it has the highest UV energy, UV ultraviolet light. We're coming back to the transmutational energy of purple and the frequency of purple light. So when you actually, and this has been proven in laboratories as well, where water has been exposed to the noon sunlight, and bacteria in that actually die off because it's just so strong. So you can actually, the sun has definitely got a cleansing energy factor at that time, but that's not the case the whole day. So it's really in that time around noon. If you pop your crystals just out, then that's a way you could actually discharge your crystals and at the same time charge, and I'll come back to that later. So sunlight is a very beautiful charging medium, but again, to be cautious about certain crystals, and I'll talk about that. So we've spoken about incense and sacred smokes as cleansing. We've spoken about amethyst. We have spoken about salt cleanses. Rice. Let's talk about rice. I've heard this a lot. Rice, dry rice, you can just leave it in that. I don't find it does anything. It's my honest, humble opinion. So I know some people swear by it. For me, that's not really doing the job. It's kind of absorbing something, but it's not absorbing everything. It is the case that you can then throw the rice, and you should throw the rice away. But that's, again, this is my personal humble experience. I just don't find that it does very much. So I would never recommend it. So it's just one of those things. And yes, Sarah, I'm coming to the last one. It's not the last one, but there's one more. But this is another beautiful mechanical way that you can actually cleanse your crystals, and it's a very thorough way, and it's one of the ways that we use a lot, simply because we have a lot of crystals in the house, especially when you have a new delivery. We do wash crystals, definitely, and we sometimes even, when they're not in their optimum state, we actually rub them with oils and that kind of thing, just to really wake them up and bless them and that kind of thing. But to cleanse and discharge, we use sound. So as you know, Simon has many sound bowls. I'm just sat next to his table here, and we have a crystal bowl as well. So we use the crystal bowls, we use the Tibetan bowls, and we use them to cleanse the crystals, because it's quick and it's very, very thorough. When you're using the sound bowls, you create a vibration. It's a vibrational field, and the vibrational field just shatters any stagnant energy that it encounters, and it just gets broken up. So best example I can give for that at the moment, it's just one of those things. You will probably remember them as well, when you used to hear the Concords go between America and the UK, or any fighter jets that break through the sound barrier. There's this almighty bang, and it's basically just that they are they are creating so much vibration through their speed that they are hitting this pocket that they've been building up, and just penetrate it, and it just disperses with a great big bang. And that's basically exactly the same thing that happens with the sound bowls. It's just they get into the density of that energy, and they just break it up, and it disperses. So, and that's the beauty of singing bowls. So you can use tinctures. That beautiful, really high pitched tone is lovely as well. You can use drums even, but I just find, even just, if you've got smaller crystals, you can just pop them in the bowl and just play the bowl until you hear that the sound of the bowl begins to ring sweet again. Okay, so bowls have a lovely way of telling you when stagnant energy is present, because you can just hear that the sound doesn't ring true. It doesn't sound sweet. It's very often, actually, it's just like a thud. It's just like you just hear boom, until you actually keep playing, and at some point then that vibration becomes loose and it clears, and then all of a sudden the sound changes. It becomes clearer, it rings longer, and there's a sweetness to the tone again, and then it's clean, it's good. So it's a perfect way, especially when you have many, many crystals in the house, to give them some thorough attention and just cleanse them on a larger basis. So sorry, I just need to have a gulp of water. Last but not least, the other thing that I want to talk about is when you have a crystal that is really icky. I've said salt cleanse is probably the way to do it, but sometimes it's really good for crystals to return to the earth for a day, for 2 days, for a month. It's just one of those things that that really helps them recalibrate to their original blueprint. So being in the darkness, because that's where most of the crystals come from, that's where they've been formed. They love the darkness, they love the womb, being back in the womb of Mother Earth. So when you have a crystal where you really feel it needs to return to the earth for a while, to return to its original blueprint, bury it. The only thing I will say is mark it well, because you wouldn't be the first one who's lost a crystal or two somewhere in the garden because the stick somehow got pulled out by the kids or the dog, and you forget where you've buried it. So it's just one of those things. It is a very thorough way, and you will know when the crystal then comes back out whether, it's had enough time. It's just one of those things. The other thing that this is personal, okay? And again, you need to be a little bit in tune with that as well. Some crystals have been inside for so long and in rooms, and they've worked so hard for such a long time that they love to be returned to nature. So, and just sit there. So a lot of our crystals, when they actually came with us to Greece, they've just lived outside. They were the type of crystal that could do that because nothing would do any harm. So they were sunlight resistant, they were cold resistant, and that kind of thing. And we didn't have too big a temperature drop in the day that it would have harmed the crystals. So it's just one of those things. But just being exposed to the elements can have a very healing effect on crystals that have worked very, very hard. So you get that beautiful energetic of cleansing through sunlight, charging through sunlight, charging through weather, cleansing through rain, frost, wind, air, all the elements doing their thing, and kind of recalibrating and bringing the original blueprint of the crystals back into alignment. So that is also, if you're not worried about, them being indoors all the time and you can safely leave them outside, then by all means, please do. But again, I need to put a word with caution with that a lot of crystals will either fade in the sunlight. If it heats up too quickly or goes too cold too quickly, you have the risk of them breaking, especially in the frost, if that temperature difference is too big. And some don't like being out in the rain, and some just get weathered and damaged in general. So don't do this with everything. I just do it mainly with my big quartz points. They just love that process because they work very hard in the house. And they work very hard with me, bless them, because they hold my original energy blueprint in a high vibration. So it's one of those. So that's the last one that you can actually use to actually discharge. Okay, so this is really important that you understand that you need to discharge before you actually charge. Then let's come to charging. So when you're charging a crystal, what you are then doing is actually, instead of putting energy into it, out of it, taking energy out of it, you are putting energy into it. So in a way, you are programming your crystal, or you are actually asking it to absorb a particular energy so that it can, crystal holiday. That's a good way of describing it, actually, Jackie. But yeah, you are giving it an extra dimension, an extra flavor, because you are infusing a particular energy into it, or you are actually reminding a crystal of its kind of originating healing energies, that kind of thing. And now I'll just say, what I mean with that. So you can charge your crystals in any way you like. So you can either give a clear quartz point, for example, the energy of another crystal that you may want to use in an essence, for example, but it's not safe to use that particular crystal. So you ask your quartz crystal to absorb that energy so you can use that safely in the water. That is one of the ways you could charge a crystal. By using sunlight, you can charge the crystal. So sunlight charging is basically a waking up. It's a activation. It's a remembering of other things that you want to bring into that spectrum, moonlight, and the environment. So I'll just quickly go through those. So charging, first of all, let's just kind of come back to what is charging. Charging for me is actually activating something. So when we go into a healing session, for example, what we often do is we actually rub our hands together, and in that moment you create friction. And when you create friction, you create heat, you create movement. So, and that's basically what happens when you work with activation. You create movement. You actually ask something to wake up, enliven, and kind of, start to get all worked up and say, yeah, I'm ready to work. So when you rub your hands, first of all, you usually get a tingling in your hands as such, but you can also feel the heat. And even in physics, you know that anything that you rub and you heat up, what happens within the molecular structure of whatever you're rubbing, the molecules all of a sudden begin to move much quicker. So that's the activation process as such. And basically, that's what we're doing when we're charging as such. We are beginning to create movement, extra movement within the crystal. So when we are actually charging a crystal, for example, to work with it, then I say, touch it, rub it, create heat, hold it in between your hands, and just really, wake the crystals up as such. Or the same thing happens in sunlight. So when you actually charge your crystals in sunlight, you then basically create heat within the crystal. And so the molecules within begin to move much quicker and it becomes activated and more alive. Moonlight does a little bit of a different thing. Moonlight is very much an energetic charge that you are adding to the crystal. It's very often a much more feminine, divine energy. It's a more mysterious energy as such. And like I said earlier, there are actually moments that I wouldn't particularly want to put the crystals into the moonlight because of the particular planetary constellations that may be out there. It may actually be a moon phase that perhaps are not so brilliant for charging crystals. So, read into that a little bit and just really become aware of the general kind of collective energies that are in that particular moon cycle, and then see, do I really want to kind of infuse that as an added extra into my crystals. So but then there are crystals which just absolutely adore either sunlight or moonlight. So sunstone, for example, carnelian, the citrine, all those lovely warming, energizing crystals love to be charged in sunlight, while selenite, for example, moonstone, those stones respond a lot more to moon phases and moonlight because that's in their energetic blueprint. And then coming back to the environment as such. So if you have a garden quartz or a moss agate or a green aventurine, the green spectrum as such, they love to just have a couple of days in the garden because they are akin to that element. Whilst, like I said earlier, the Lemurians, the aquamarines, anything that's really related to the flow of water, sea, ocean energy, they love to be near the sea, be taken to the sea, so they can just kind of get energized and absorb that energy to remind them of that original blueprint that is part of their healing energy. So that is charging, but it's not cleansing. So always be really aware of that, really understand the difference between charging and discharging, cleansing. The one is not doing the other. And if anything, never mind the charging, the most important thing that you always, always, always need to do is the cleansing, just to keep your crystals clear and not to transfer one energy to the other. Excuse me. I haven't spoken this much in a long time. So the last thing, and this is really important for you guys to know as well, to keep your vibration, keep the vibration of your crystals clear, contented, and in a good in a good working order throughout in your life. And I'm going to come to that now, Wendy. There are just certain things that you should really do on a regular basis. So first of all, and I touched on this earlier just for a moment, treat your crystals with respect, okay? Treat them like they are living beings. They are. They are much slower than us, but they are living beings. And that is simply shown in the fact I have loads of examples at the moment again. They self-heal. they still grow on, they change patterns, they continue to grow. You can see in crystals, even though they've been taken out of their environment, they still do their own thing, and some continue to grow, some continue to self-heal, some create new formations, some actually start showing new patterns. They go milky, they go clear. All of a sudden there are new kind of, galaxies within. Crystals change over time, so they are living beings, and they very, very definitely have a consciousness. It's the consciousness that we actually tune into. So treat them like living beings, okay? They really need that kind of mutual respect to stay at an optimum level. Cleanse them regularly. So be very aware of what is in your collection. If you have crystals, especially in busy rooms where a lot of people go in and out, like your living room, like a smoky quartz, for example, or a shungite, really hard-working crystals that, where their task, their healing property is to absorb and cleanse and hold, like smoky quartz, and then release. These are crystals that need to be cleansed very, very regularly. So for me, as a go-to is, first of all, when they arrive with you. Secondly, when you've been working with them intensively, whether that is actually in a meditation that you've been working with, and you've really had a good self-inquiry session, that kind of thing, or a really good exchange with your crystal, especially when you're working one-to-one with other crystals, with other people. Every time you need to clean, cleanse, discharge, charge. So in that order. And then for me, if you have them around the house, I would really say do it once a week. So for me, for example, Sunday mornings it's just that kind of energetic day for me. I love Sunday mornings. There's just something about the energy of that day, even though I work on Sunday mornings, and, we don't have that pattern of Monday to Friday. We just kind of work whenever we can and when the mood is right. And I just work a little bit every day. But Sunday mornings are just very special to me. And so I tend to then really tune into what needs to be done. I scan the shelves. I really tune into each and every one of them just quickly, and I just see, okay, and I will cleanse, and we'll play the bowls, or we'll light some smokes, and we'll do something. So I always say, just to be on the safe side, just set aside one spiritual ritual ceremony moment where you actually just really plan that into a weekly thing, and say, okay, this is the moment that I'm going to take care of my crystals for half an hour that day. That's what I'm going to do. And then you do all the stuff that I've just explained today. So make it part of your kind of spiritual regime, and create ceremony around it. And that's the last thing, that I'm going to come to is, when you receive your crystals, or when you do these ceremonies, you would do exactly the same thing as when you would go into a healing ceremony, or when you are creating sacred space for yourself where you are going to get ready for a meditation, that kind of thing. So really come home to yourself, create a beautiful space. Make sure you've cleaned the house, you've cleansed your space, you've blessed your space. And you can then just infuse the energy into the space, as in, okay, I'm ready, I'm here. You call in your angels and your guides. You really make it special. You light a candle, you light your incense, and then you just go through your crystals and you just check and you just see, and you just give them a little bit of TLC. Like I said, sometimes we have just a tiny little drop of essential oil, lavender essential oil, that we just have a cloth. And if there are crystals that just need a little bit of extra TLC after a wash and cleanse, then we'll just very gently with that cloth, we'll rub them. So, and it just seals them nicely again, and it just creates that wholeness around them. So really come into that space and make that a ritual at least once a week. And then just, you'll know, especially when you're working with crystals that you haven't worked with for a while and that are a little bit sleepy, you'll feel that, you'll sense that. And then you go through that process and bring them alive again and rub them up a bit and just focus your attention on them and they'll be good to go. And if you do that on a regular basis with all your crystals, and you make sure that your house is in good order. And what I mean with that is if you have a very chaotic house and you have stuff lying around anywhere, I think most of us now know what kind of effects that has on our psyche, and the crystals will certainly absorb that as well. It's an energy of chaos. It's not a wholesome kind of environment where you feel at rest and happy and focused and grounded. So make sure that you really look into that. And then when you do that, then your crystals usually will just need a little bit of a wake up if you really want to work with them. And the moment you actually kind of tune into them, it'll be like, oh yeah, they're good, they're okay, and they won't need much work. So that's that. And I just saw, what about Reiki? Yep, Reiki is a good way to infuse. Okay, you really need to know your stuff with Reiki to actually cleanse and purify to a degree where I would say you've really released the energy. You would probably need to be at least Reiki 2, if not actually Reiki master, to really understand the energy and read and know when the crystal is totally cleansed. So, but it's a very lovely way to infuse the crystals as well. So to charge them with that. So, yeah, and that's basically the way. Now, just the last thing I just wanted to say is a lot of people say the programming is one of those things where I there's a lot of discussion, and I have a very strong opinion about that. A lot of people say you should program your crystals to actually do their healing stuff. And the only answer I have to that is me, who's been on the planet for nearly 50 years now. What do I know that a stone doesn't know? Stone has been here billions of years. It's in its original blueprint, usually, if it's taken care of well. And it should, by all means, be doing what it does best, because nothing's meddled with it as such. So me, as a small human being, why should I think that I have anything sensible or good to add to that? That's the thing for me. So for me, that's, other than being the medium to say, I'm going to cleanse you because I've asked you to do stuff out of your usual clean environment, so I need to take care of you, I have nothing to add to that. So it's one of the reasons that I actually don't program or infuse crystals as such with my healing intention. I have the intention of cleansing. I have the intention in overall of healing, perhaps, but I will not ask the crystal to do something that it knows how to do it perfectly well. So, and also I find that it actually limits the crystal. So the crystals know so well what they need to do and know it so much better than we. So I don't meddle with that energy at all. They very much know best. So, yeah, and that's basically in a nutshell what I wanted to share with you tonight. I have no idea what the time is, 2022, so I've nearly talked for 1.5 hours, which is pretty amazing. So I'm going to open up for questions. If you have any questions, I'm also just going to scroll through what I've got on the screen and just see what questions there are. And just on that note, actually, I just wanted to say one last thing. If you find that all of a sudden your life is starting to get a little bit weird or more chaotic than it should be, or there's just things happening that shouldn't be happening, that kind of thing, check in with your crystals. Because it's very often a sign that they have absorbed too much of the environment energy that may be in your house, and it's a time to actually have a good cleanse and clear. Okay, it's usually one of the signs when things start going wrong, clumsiness, little accidents, and like I said, just weird and odd things happening in the house all of a sudden, family members getting very grumpy, harmony not working the way it should anymore. Then I always say, go and check on your crystals. They've been working very hard, and it's time to help them discharge a few things. So I really hope that's helped you a lot. And let me see, just going through thank yous, thank you, thank you. So welcome. I really hope you enjoyed this. And like I said, if you have any questions, by all means do. So Claire, I have an amethyst geode, which is really heavy. I put it in the garden once every 6 months, rinse it with water and leave it in the shade on a sunny day for a few hours. It's a really good thing to do, Claire. We had some as well. We haven't got any at the moment because obviously we didn't want to drag them all the way to Greece and back. So we sold ours off. We're hoping to find some new ones that want to join the clan for a while, so I can actually use that method again. It's a good thing to do. It's certainly not enough, I would say, especially if they are in rooms that are very heavily used. I would really say that would be a good opportunity, for example, to get a singing bowl if you haven't got it, and just once a week, just give your geode a good old sound bath. That is really good. So I really think that is a quick and easy way to get around, big heavy crystals as well. So I hope that helps, Claire. Did you say how often? Yeah, no, I've come to that, so that's good. How do I learn about the moon circle? Do you recommend a book? The moon cycle, yes. To be quite honest, there's loads of people, beautiful people who do amazing stuff on moon energy, moonology. Gosh, I forgot her name now. It's just popped out of my head. I just had it in my mind. I'll look it up and I'll put a link in later and just let you know. So she would be one of the ones. There are so many people out there who do it. So, and I can, I can't really recommend anyone because I personally don't work with moon energy very much, even though I'm feminine and a lot of people think, well, you should automatically work with the moon. I'm very much a solar being, so I tend to work a lot more by the cycles of the stars and the universe as such in general, and there's the solar energy cycles. So, but yeah, I'll pop it in a quick extra link later. So can you use a metal pendulum to remove negative energy and recharge like most dowsers do with our energy field each day? Answer to that, Sean, is I don't know. Very honestly, I don't, because I don't, and it's funny enough, Simon is actually doing a dowsing course. I don't understand how the pendulum would actually remove that energy. So I need to look into that and I'll give it a try and I'll report back. That's the best way I can say. I know dowsers do this, they do cleanse in a certain way, but how they do that, I would really have to check with Simon because he's got all the stuff and the books on it, and I will give it a try and I'll report back. It's a really good question. Well done. Right, what else have we? Sorry if you've already mentioned, I missed the beginning. Is brown rice. I spoke about brown rice, so you've got my amethyst and that. Yeah, amethyst, natural. Okay, so talking about natural amethyst, and actually I did forget one thing, charging. Another good way to charge is not just in the amethyst, but also just rock quartz. So quartz crystals, either as a bed. You can get rock quartz just as slabs. It does come as a mass form, and you can just get chunks of rock quartz. But I always find as soon as you have points in them, because points direct and amplify the energy, I just find they work so much better than just a bed of tumbles, for example, or a slab. So yes. Right, sage, yes, dried sage, charging circle we've spoken about. Cool. So I think that's all the questions there, and we're just going to scroll back down. I do this with water and have tried with crystals only recently. Yeah, I think it's a really good one. So, Jackie, I have a large singing bowl. How many crystals can I put in it once at a time? Okay, so I would always say, don't put too many in. So, especially because you need to be careful that they don't bang together and damage each other. So I would always say just use one at a time. But you can also do it vice versa by actually just surrounding the crystal in the sound, so directing the sound at the crystal. So when we play the bowls, we go over the crystals because sound travels everywhere and it will still penetrate the crystals. So you can do it that way as well. But if there is, for example, a particular piece that you work a lot with, just pop it in the bowl and then you can use it as that. So that works well. Okay. One beautiful way, actually, I just wanted to say that, but this is going to get confusing because I've just told you one thing about stagnant water or water that doesn't flow. But you can fill a singing bowl or a crystal bowl with water and then pop the crystal in there and then play the bowl. Usually you would just have the exchange of energies, but because the crystal bowl or the singing bowl will actually disperse and break up the energy, it gets transmuted. Okay, so that's a really lovely way to cleanse a crystal, especially when when like I said, when it loves the water and it's okay to be in the water. But you could try that as well. So that's just putting again a really special energy into it as well. So. I'm missing for sure. Will this be called Wendy? Yes, that will be Yasmin Boland. Thank you very much, Emma. That was the word Yasmin. Moonology, that's the one. And yes, the recording will just stay up on the page now for a while. So and Liz said it as well. So yes. Any recommendations on where to buy a singing bowl? Do you sell these? We don't yet. We do have plans in the future to actually source someone in Nepal, a small family, and support them in a way. That's not on the cards yet. So just just so you know, we haven't got them at the moment. There are fantastic people out there. Simon gets his bowls at the moment from someone who's actually very local to us in Lostwithiel. It's oh gosh, again, it'll be a link that I will put up extra. I can't think anymore, as in I can't remember things right now. I'm in the middle of a fibro flare as well, so my brain is a bit mush right now. My memory retention is not as good as it should be. So, but I will put that up. And they are hand beaten. So it's really important to get hand beaten ones, I find, simply because the energy is more beautiful when they're not machine done. They have a much better ring tone, they have a much better penetration. So always try and get some hand beaten ones rather than machine cut ones from the many sites that you can get them from. So by almost in any good kind of esoteric shop that has a lot of stuff, so big ones, they do tend to have one or two good hand beaten bowls. So look at that, or you can look online for people who specialize in sound instruments, and they will also have the kind of hand beaten bowls. So I really hope that helps as well. So, but yeah, that would be one of the things that we were hoping to add at some point. And Mona, you were asking about K2. Again, I'm just going to try and keep this really to the cleansing and blessing and the theme for tonight, which is just keeping your crystals cleansed and blessed and clear. And it's one of the things that I like I said as well earlier, and I forgot to mention that in the part where I said, create ceremony around your cleansing rituals. Bless your crystals, bless the water that you're cleansing them with, bless yourself, bless the space. Blessing a space is just so beautiful and instantly lifts and clears and beautifies the vibrations in the room and with your intention as well. So bless the crystals regularly, and they'll really repay by having a really lovely high clear vibration. Yeah, Jackie, that's one of the places that you can definitely get some really good hand beaten bowls. There's a couple of shops there which have some beautiful sound instruments. So Claire, this has been one of the things that I'm still waiting for. I've ordered them and then the box got lost, and I think in the meantime the hearts went out into the world to different suppliers. I'm hoping to get some on Friday. So fingers crossed that I'll have some more in stock again on Friday, and I'll let you all know. And the other thing I just wanted to say, Friday's the market, Friday evening, I'll be here. The week after, I'm actually in the Netherlands. So you'll probably find that we'll be having a split market where I'll be talking from the Netherlands. Simon is showing the crystals here. But yeah, either one of those two, hopefully I'll have unicorn stones available. So yeah. Anyway, guys, I hope that was helpful. I'm going to love and leave you for tonight. I hope you've learned a lot tonight, and you now know how to really take care of your crystals, how to cleanse, understand the difference between cleaning, cleansing, discharging, and charging, blessing, and infusing your crystals with energies. So, and yeah, and if you really enjoy this kind of thing, then let me know what you would like me to talk about next. And I'll do a special on that. And yeah, then hopefully I can share little personal snippets with you all, and you'll find it helpful in your own healing journey. Okay. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Take care. Lots of love.